Councillors and officers and those who are joining us online for the January meeting of Corangamite Shire Council. Can I begin with the prayer? We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us who serve as leaders to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interest of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past, present and emerging. I'd like to introduce the councillors and staff that we have here with us this evening, and I'll start with Councillor Jamie Vogels, Councillor Joe Beard, Deputy Mayor Geraldine Kennedy, Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Laurie Hickey, Councillor Mick Cole, and for the very last time, our CEO, Mr. Andrew Mason. We also have with us Acting Director of Corporate and Community Services, Ms. Michelle Stevenson, Manager of Financial Services, Ms. Jackie Thomas, and Manager of Community Services, Ms. Katie Hearn. And to my left, we have Acting Director of Works and Services, John Kelly, Director of Sustainable Development, Mrs. Justine Linley, Ms. Belinda Bennett, who is the Community Safety Coordinator, and also for the last time, Mr. Rory Neeson, our Manager for Growth and Engagement, and Mr. James Plozza is the Executive Services and Governance Coordinator. So thank you, councillors and staff. Mr. Mason, we have no apologies this evening, but there is a declaration of conflict of interest.
Correct, Mayor. As you well know, you have submitted a conflict of interest declaration for agenda item 9.1, which is the finance report.
Thank you. Councillors, item 5 is the confirmation of minutes. Someone like to move the recommendation, please? Councillor Hickey, I believe you had an amendment.
Yes, I just wanted to move. I was just trying to find the order was about the EV station. It was recorded as unanimously 7-0, and I actually voted against that one, so if we could make that adjustment, please, I'd be happy to move it with that adjustment.
Thank you. Someone like to second? Thank you, Councillor Macon. Any further comments or questions, councillors? All in favour? Carried. We have no deputations or presentations this evening, and move straight into officers' reports. And as you mentioned, Mr. Mason, I have a conflict of interest in the finance report, so I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair, please. Thanks, Councillor Kennedy.
Councillors, we have item 9.1, finance report for December 2022. Jackie Thomas, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The report before you is the December quarterly financial report. The current financial result compared to budget for the December quarter was a surplus of $1.27 million ahead of the expected year-to-date budget. A large factor in this $1.27 million difference is due to the weather delays that we have had in our payments for capital works of $345,000. We have also received additional income of around $192,000 in the form of user fees from our landfill due to new customers. Investment interest was greater than expected by about $392,000, and that's due to a higher cash holding because we haven't spent that money on our capital works yet, and also the interest market rates have just been increasing. This report also proposes that Council approve a $10,000 variation to our forecast budget as an allocation to the Camperdown Courthouse Committee. They requested funding for operations and improvements, which is in response to a budget submission made during the 22-23 budget process. Managers and officers are currently conducting a review of budgets and the required funds to deliver programs and initiatives as per our council plan. We intend on presenting this at next month's council meeting. Madam Deputy Mayor, the recommendations are before you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Councillors, anyone would like to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor B. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Macon.
Through you, I'm sorry.
Yes, Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and it's my pleasure to move this recommendation. And thank you to Ms Thomas and obviously Mr Beccari as our finance managers for bringing this report to us. I think each time we see these finance reports coming to us, we can see just how hard the organisation works to, I guess, not only deliver the projects in budget, just as we anticipate, but also balancing everything else around it too. I mean, we've got such a well-oiled machine here at Corangamite. I think as I said, every time we see the finance reports, there's hardly any issues that we have to ever query or question. There's always a legitimate, relevant answer, which is great. And we've always had that no surprises. So it's, as I said, it's a credit to the organisation that we can continue to have such positive progress of finance reports coming to the table. It is, however, I think worth mentioning that we're very lucky that we took a pun and we've been investing our money. I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. You always wonder what the risk will be like, and you know, it's not always a safe thing to do, but we were very conservative in our risk appetite when it comes to investing money, and in this instance, it certainly paid off. I mean, we've come up with a windfall of over $300,000, which our ratepayers should be extremely proud of, because that will then obviously go into operations and obviously services ultimately. So everything else is usually accounted for. I know often we get reported on that we're sitting on a massive surplus and we're all cashed up, but as we keep saying, those projects have always got that funding allocated. So it's worth reminding people that we're just conservative in our spending, but also conservative in our operations, to the point that I think the whole organisation should be again really proud of when these reports come to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Lincoln.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Beard has said. Even though our balance down the bottom is very healthy, the money has been allocated for with all our projects. We've just got to get them completed in time. And obviously the 10,000 budget variation is just due to an oversight in a previous finance report, so I'm more than happy to move this recommendation, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lincoln. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Bring the Mayor back to the chair.
So, councillors, we're now moving to item 9.2, which is the application of the Common Seal of Council for 2022. Mr Mason.
And thank you, through you, Mayor. While this may appear to be just a procedural item, it is, I think, an important one because the use of the Common Seal carries significant legal weight. And so therefore, this is an important check and balance for Council on its use. As is attached, there's a detailed list of times where the Common Seal has been used. I'm more than happy to go through those in detail, but I've been assured that that's unnecessary. So the recommendation is before Council is that you receive the attached report and effectively then give authorisation to the CEO for the coming year to continue to use the Common Seal. So recommendation is there.
Thank you, Mr Mason. Short and to the point. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Hickey, do I have a seconder? Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. And just looking through the list of times it has been used, it's probably due for a bit of a revamp anyway. It's probably getting a bit worn out by now. But yes, it does carry a fair bit of legal weight, and I'm very happy to move that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, did you have anything further?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as Mr Mason said, it is procedural, but it also is a very important report in terms of good governance and transparency. As it is a compliance item and in terms of state legislation. So it's good to see the report and that we have been, Mr Mason's been using that Common Seal with great frequency. Thank you, Madam
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillors, anything further? To a vote, all in favour? That's carried. Item 9.3 is the enforcement, infringements and prosecutions policy. Ms Bennett, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The enforcement, infringements and prosecutions policy provides Council's approach to enforcement, not only enforcement of its local laws, but enforcement of various legislation that Council has authority to enforce across local laws, emergency management and environmental health areas. So the policy spells out a number of enforcement tools that Council has available to it, noting that we generally like to try to achieve compliance through things like verbal warnings and discussions before we move to infringements and prosecutions. There's only minor amendments proposed to this policy, some updates to align with the requirements of the Infringements Act, incorporating some new enforcement tools that we have available to us under the Environment Protection Act, and extending this policy to legislation that the Environment Health Team are authorised to enforce. So the recommendation before Council is to adopt the policy as presented.
Thank you, Ms Bennett. Councillors, someone prepared to move that motion? Councillor Vocals, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey. Councillor Vocals.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. If you're going to have laws, you've got to enforce them, and this is what the policy is all about. And it's good to see Council take a softly approach at the start and build up to the more serious enforcement measures. But I'm happy to move that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vocals. Councillor Hickey.
Nothing to
Anything
add.
further? Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.4 is the fuel reduction slashing on roadsides policy. Ms Bennett, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. This policy provides, I guess, a position on roadside fuel reduction slashing. It recognises that slashing on roadsides can really help to reduce the fire risk on roadsides, but it needs to be done in a way that makes sure that it protects road users and the safe use of the road, as well as the environmental and cultural values of that roadside. The current policy allows for slashing on roadsides in areas where there's minimal risk, without a permit, where there is minimal risk to native vegetation and cultural heritage sites. So it's proposed that there's only minor amendments to this policy as part of that review to incorporate considerations to cultural heritage as part of that policy, and to also prohibit slashing on catastrophic fire danger days for fire safety. The recommendation before Council is to approve the policy as presented.
Thank you, Ms Bennett. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Cole. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lincoln, thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This, especially for the North Ward, is a pretty important topic because we have Valeris up there and vast tracts of unused roads, or sections of roads that are unused that grow a lot of fuel, and the ability to be able to slash and reduce that fuel load is very, very important. I've had telephone calls and letters from people around my area recently on this subject, and very keen to reduce the fuel loads and make it safer for the community. It's a real problem, and to be able to do it in a safe and strategic way and early enough to be able to reduce the load is of utmost importance. So I have no trouble moving this.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I agree entirely with what Councillor Cole has said tonight. I feel that it's great that farmers are having a little bit of ability to keep the roadside slashed, so they can also see when they're exiting their properties as well, and keeping that grass down is always good for a fire hazard and everything else like that. So more than happy to move this recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Macon. Councillors, any further comment? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.5 is the roadside firewood collection policy. Ms Bennett, you're having a busy evening. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So this policy relates to the collection of firewood from council roadsides.
So the current policy prohibits firewood collection on roadsides due to the risk of this activity to users, collectors, as well as council and roadside assets and the environment. The policy's been reviewed, and as part of that review, I guess it was timely to relook at that position around whether it should be prohibited or permitted. So as part of the review, I guess the officers have looked at, I guess, 2 alternative options, including allowing firewood roadside collection under a permit system, as well as looking at a firewood collection depot. Obviously, firewood collection has some inherent risks, not only risk to the collectors, but risk to other road users as well as councils. So things like using chainsaws on roadsides, particularly if people aren't wearing the appropriate PPE, traffic, people parking on the roadsides whilst they collect firewood without appropriate traffic management in place, they have the risk to cause injury to persons or worse, loss of life, as well as damage to equipment, assets and the environment, which council could potentially be liable for. So given the liability issues, we've sought some advice from our insurer around the option to be able to permit roadside firewood collection. And the insurer's advice is that council's insurance wouldn't cover a third party collecting firewood from a roadside. So any collector would need to have their own public liability insurance and provide council with a copy of this. They've also advised that obviously if we were going to allow firewood collection, it would need to be done under a permit system, and that permit would need to have adequate controls and conditions in place to manage those risks and minimise the risk of any loss or damage. We've sought some advice from the insurer around what sort of conditions would need to be included in a permit, and based off the advice they've provided, we consider it impractical to be able to implement a permit system, and we require a lot of resources to administer and enforce. So the sort of conditions the insurer was talking about is things like, making sure we control where firewood's collected, where people park on the roadsides, making sure they're adequately trained. Even things like on-site induction would be something we'd need to consider as a permit system, which we don't think is achievable. The other advice the insurer has provided is that council would have a potential liability if loss or injury occurred during firewood collection. Even if that third party had their own insurance, council would potentially wear some of that liability. As I said, we also looked at the option of a firewood collection depot in addition to the permit system. So this would involve council going out and collecting firewood from the roadsides and having it available at a centralised depot where residents could collect that firewood. That obviously removes the risk of people being outside collecting firewood from the roadsides, but would take a lot of resources for council to administer. Would still have potential liabilities for council if someone suffered injury or damage at that depot. And there's also concern that council could potentially be competing with commercial firewood collectors. So based off, I guess, the assessment that's done and the advice that we've got from the insurer, the reviewed policy proposes to maintain the position of prohibiting roadside firewood collection, as this presents the lowest risk for council in terms of liability, but also for the community in terms of public safety. Council would not be liable for any loss or injury that occurred during roadside firewood collection where we have a policy that prohibits it. And based off this, we're proposing only minor administrative changes to this policy. So the recommendation before council is to approve the policy as presented.
Thank you, Ms Bennett. Councillors, recommendations? I'd like to move. Councillor Vogels, are you moving?
I'm moving that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Beard. Councillor Vogels, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I think given the costs of energy, especially to heat the home at the moment, this policy was highlighted for extra scrutiny to see if there's a viable way to allow roadside firewood collection. I think this policy first came in about 2015 when the state government removed itself from any liability for roadside wood collection. This obviously shifted the cost burden onto council for insurance and management costs. But unfortunately, this report highlights the reasons why changing the policy to allow roadside firewood collection is not financially beneficial to the bulk of their ratepayers. But it's not all doom and gloom for people with wood fires. there is options to collect firewood for domestic use from state forests and Crown land with a permit from the Forest Fire Management Authority, allowing domestic firewood collection from designated areas at designated times of the year. And I do think Council's best interest is to promote these opportunities through social media when applicable. In my personal opinion, it is the council roads that have minimal usage and could safely, with a permit and guidelines, be allowed firewood collection would be a low risk to council. There's a lot of roads we have that barely see a car, which if highlighted and a bit more work done into it to see whether there is an opportunity in the future. But for now, I accept the best option is to accept the officer's recommendation and keep a ban on the roadside firewood collection.
Thanks, Councillor Vogels. Councillor Beard.
Yes, thank you through you, Madam Mayor, and completely agree with everything that Councillor Vogels has said. And I'd like to thank Ms Bennett for her very eloquent report reading. Thank you. And I think Councillor Vogels touched on it. We did brief significantly on this policy because we went into a lot of detail around options, and we spent a bit of time on the permit system and the collection depot. We really did try to come up with another solution to allow or enable roadside wood collection. And at the end of the day, you have to call it when the risk is just too great. And it's not only to the organisation, but then ultimately it's to our ratepayer, and then obviously those people that are potentially carrying out the work. So the risk and the resources for me were the main kickers for that it's just too intense. So I have no trouble at all with keeping the status quo on this one. And as Councillor Vogel said, there is a designated firewood collection, so it's not like people don't have access to it, and that can be done in a safely manner and a controlled manner. So I have no problem in supporting the recommendation before us. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. It does sound a little bit ridiculous. We're in a wooded area. We have got plenty of an ample supply of wood that could potentially be firewood that could bring our energy costs down. However, the fact that the litigation falls back on the Shire means that we must accept this policy. Sadly, because it is a very, very cheap form of wood, but it's not going to be cheap if somebody gets hurt or somebody collects firewood that causes an accident on the side of the road. It's very difficult to police this policy, and so yes, it's with disappointment that I agree with what the previous two councillors have said, that we must adopt the policy.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Is there anything further, councillors? Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with the other previous speakers, and I will draw note to the exemptions, which says landowners removing fallen trees and limbs along boundary fences to the minimum extent necessary to allow the fence to be maintained and retain stock within the property. So there is some firewood there that can be had from people if they know a farmer or someone has got a tree over a fence and need it cleaned up. The trouble with that section is that limbs do hang over fences and do fall off when you least expect them. And I think it's a good thing to sometimes trim a few of those back to make sure that they're not going to fall off over a fence and cause a problem later on.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. Item 9.6 is the asset valuation and revaluation policy. Ms Thomas, can you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The report before you is the asset valuation and revaluation policy. The purpose of the policy is to provide a framework for the efficient and effective administration of council's assets with regard to their fair value, and to ensure that those values are reviewed in accordance with the applicable Australian accounting standards. While it might not sound like the most interesting policy, council's assets and infrastructure account for $480 million on our balance sheet. This policy provides the framework and sets out the roles and responsibilities for how they're valued, both initially and over their life. Knowledge of our current asset values is essential for the effective and efficient management of our assets, and having current information can assist in making decisions regarding the allocation of resources to those assets. There have not been any substantial changes to the policy other than updating some of the definitions and references to the Australian accounting standards. Madam Mayor, the recommendation that the Council adopts the asset valuation and revaluation policy is before you.
Thank you, Ms Thomas. Councillors, someone prepared to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, certainly with $180 million worth of assets on our books, we certainly do need to know what the valuation of those is. And of course, we all know it's a moving picture from year to year. Valuations can change, sometimes quite in quite a short period of time. So it is important to keep a handle on that because we're making a lot of decisions about allocating funds to with regard to those assets, and it's certainly an important factor in effective management of those assets and making good decisions about how we expend money on those same assets. And just a little footnote too, that the Audit and Risk Committee did review this policy as well and recommended the policy that is before us. So I support the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Macon.
No, I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any further comments? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.7 is the biennial strategic risk update for January. Ms Stevenson, please.
Oh, thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. This report presents the Strategic Risk Profile Report. This report is prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Performance Reporting Framework and is presented to the Audit and Risk Committee and also to Council biannually. So strategic risks are the overarching risks that may threaten the achievement of the strategies and objectives set out in the Council plan, and operational risks or day-to-day risks identified and aligned with these strategic risks. A new set of strategic risks identified after the adoption of each new Council plan, and they are sufficiently high level to allow the introduction of new and emerging operational risks. The Corporate Risk Register is an effective tool as part of the risk framework that records the strategic risks as well as day-to-day or operational risks which are aligned with those strategic risks. It also identifies the measures that are in place to reduce those risks to an acceptable level of risk in line with Council's risk appetite or its tolerance to risk. So risks are assigned a risk rating after consideration of all of these factors, and that informs the strategic risk profile, which is presented tonight for Council's consideration. Management and oversight of risk, as we saw before in the previous report, is essential to ensure the efficient and effective management of Council operations, and therefore it's recommended the Council receive the strategic risk report attached.
Thank you, Ms Stevenson. Councillors, recommendation to receive the strategic risk report. Someone like to move that, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. That was pretty risky. I haven't got a seconder yet, it might still be. Councillors, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Macon. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think I have no trouble accepting the Council's report for the strategic risk report. Risk is something that needs to be considered in any business, and probably more so in a shire like ourselves. So I think this risk report reads very, very well. So I congratulate the authors of it, and have no trouble in moving the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much more to add. I just note that the highest risk level is a medium and there's only one low. So I think we do pretty well here at Corangamite managing our risks and our appetite for risk. No, I think they're all very well attainable, and yes, we can handle those risks quite well. So thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. I'll put that to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.8 is the appointment of an acting Chief Executive Officer. Mr Plozza, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. As you foreshadowed at the start of the meeting, this is our CEO's last meeting with us. He is departing on the 27th of January, and it's a requirement of the Local Government Act that if there is a vacancy in the office of the Chief Executive Officer, the councillor must appoint an acting Chief Executive Officer. The recommendation before you tonight is that you appoint Michael Tudball to the position, effective from the 30th of January until such time as a permanent Chief Executive Officer is in place.
Thank you, Mr. Pozza. Councillor's recommendation. Someone like to move it? Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. Thank you, Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and yeah, this is a bit of a bittersweet recommendation, this one. Obviously, to have someone of Michael Tudball's calibre come in, we actually have to have someone probably, if not the same, if not more calibre going. So that's first compliment, Andrew. So no, we're very fortunate that Michael has is going to agree to obviously come in as our acting Chief Executive Officer. I think it's really important having that external eyes come in, but it also enables the I guess the organisation to business as usual. We talked about it and we just thought there's so much going on, so many projects that we're in the midst of, and in some volatile times. It's nice to have everybody, its preference is probably to have everybody head down and doing what everyone's been usually doing, and then not having to worry about someone stepping up and then someone having to backfill. So getting the likes of a Michael Tudball, who is no stranger to our region, and certainly not a stranger to Corangamite. He's always been a great supporter of Corangamite and a great friend to many of us. I think is a great appointment in the big shoes that are going to be left behind. But I'm just really appreciative that we've got someone, as I said, of Michael's calibre who's able to be able to take on the role.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Yeah, we're very lucky to be new eyes on the situation, and I'd like to congratulate Andrew on a job well done for a long time too. So thank you very much, and wish him all the best with his new appointment. It will be business as usual here as we keep going. So
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. And yes, I think we are very lucky that that Michael Tudball was available, as he's a previous CEO at Southern Grampians Shire, and currently has the role of Regional Director at Regional Roads Victoria for Barwon South West. So it's going to be terrific to have him assisting council as we search for a new CEO. And as councillors have commented, I think we've been extremely lucky here at Corangamite for 12 years to have had Mr Mason sitting in the CEO's chair. He's provided absolutely tip-top support to council, and I know that he's certainly very well respected in the sector. So I think, Andrew, you've worked under 4 councils, so that's fairly amazing, and we're just pleased in one minute, we're disappointed and saddened that you're leaving us, but pleased that you're going to be still part of the region, and we look forward to working with you at Warrnambool City Council. Councillors, is there any other comments for us to a vote? Councillor Beard, do you want to
well, I'd like to actually say something for Andrew before he goes, but are you happy for us to do that now, or would you prefer we wait to...
No, I think we may as well go now while we're on a roll.
So yeah, I mean, personally, I wrote down a few things. I was just going to wing it, but I thought I'd better do a little bit of due diligence. But personally, for me, having come on council at an earlier age, 2 young kids and female, when there was only Councillor Castrone here, it was pretty daunting. And right from that very first day, I felt safe and supported by Andrew, and he was only 2 years into his CEO gig then. So having been here ever since that time, over 12 years ago, I've been able to learn and grow as a councillor from him in his expertise as our CEO, but also the way in which he's kept the culture of Corangamite the way it is today, that, you know, we are a very reputable council, and that always starts at the top. So it doesn't matter, I would like to think it doesn't matter what type of council you have, but it does, but then you've got to have an amazing CEO to implement that culture all the way through the organisation. And I think our communities right across Corangamite can be really proud that that has continued. Andrew, you're very well respected in the sector, and I'm surprised you've probably lasted at Corangamite for this long. But we're very fortunate that we've had you here as long as we have. And as the Mayor has just said, by moving just over the road to Warrnambool, that was probably the only way we could swallow the bitter pill, was because you're still going to be in the region. And in saying that, even though we aren't the regional city, we're a rural or regional LGA, you've acted as if you're the regional leader. So to have you now be in Warrnambool, I think that's a really positive thing for not only the rest of us, but more importantly for Warrnambool. People do listen when you speak, and that's right across Victoria. So don't change that. And it's interesting, you've always been a very calculated presence around the council table, especially at briefings, when you think you've come up with something, you think you've got a great idea, and then all of a sudden Andrew will chip in, you're like, damn, why didn't I think of that? So he's very good at coming at things from different angles. So I think Warrnambool, what our loss has been said, is definitely their gain. So I want to wish you all the best, and thank you for the support you've given me whilst I've been on council.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Andrew, congratulations on the new appointment, and of course it is bittersweet, as Councillor Beard said, because I've known you for a much shorter time than Mayor Castrain and Councillor Beard, but you've always been incredibly supportive, and you're just such a sound thinker. And you know, I've sort of just seen the work that you do around the council. You've just set an amazingly good example, really, you know, high calibre of work. You've just built such an amazing culture, and you know, a real sense of trust around the organisation. And I think that those, you know, are really exemplary, you know, things to it that you've been able to do, and not just do it, but actually maintain it. And I think everyone respects that so much and values it so much. So you know, we've benefited from your leadership enormously, and you know, we appreciate it so much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Hickey. This is your life.
Promise will be quick. I think the legacy that's left behind by Mr Mason is amazing as far as the Shire's gone. I haven't had much experience as the other former speakers, but from what I've experienced in the time that we have been on council, Andrew's been a sound thinker and well, personally a great support. And I think the legacy left behind is one thing, but I think where you're going and the difference that you'll make at another council will be very, very good. And I think their gain, I mean, our loss is their gain. So congratulate you for making the choice and making the decision to move on to bigger and better things, but glad you're still being part of our rural community.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors?
Look, I can't be left out, can I? I can't see that, can I?
Go first.
So I think the one thing I've learned around this council table, and especially at budget time, is Andrew's words popping into my head all the time. Reoccurring costs. So I'm sure at budget time that'll always pop into my head, Andrew. So thank you for that. But thank you for your support. Like Joe, young mum, a few kids at home, I was very hesitant to put my hand up, but you've made the transition into this role quite easy and very well supported, so thank you for that. And from my husband as well, Matt Macon, thank you for everything you've done for him as well. He speaks very highly and fondly of you, and I'm sure we'll all miss you, but as everyone has said before, you're only going down the road, you're still living in Corangamite, so we still get to tax you a little bit, so that's good. But thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Councillor Macon.
We still collect his rates.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's right. Councillor Vogels.
I'd look ungrateful if I didn't speak as last person here, and I shut my book because I thought we're doing a roasting. And I'll just say there's probably a difference between being really smart and being wise, and I think Andrew fits into the wise part of things, where he's not just smart, he comes up with a more wiser answer than you'd hear from most, which is a very rare quality these days. And good luck with your role in the Warrnambool City. So imagine it will be a challenging role. So just good luck with the future, Andrew.
Thank you, councillors. Now we do have a motion that's live at the moment, and that was the appointing of the acting chief executive officer. I can put that to a vote. I think all in favour. Carried. Item 9.9 is the quick response grants allocation for January, and I'll ask Mr Neeson to introduce this item. And as I mentioned before, this is his last meeting with us. Got a couple of farewells this evening, and Rory, congratulations to you on your new position at Southern Grampians as a director. It's a fantastic recognition of the work that you've done here at Corangamite for just nigh on 10 years. So we've certainly valued your contribution, and it's been a pleasure watching you grow from where you started to where you've ended up with us and going on to bigger and better things. So all the very best.
Thank you.
You can now like to introduce a quick response.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for those kind words. So, just the purpose of this report is to approve the January 23 allocation of funds under the Quick Response Grants Program. The Quick Response Grants Program is beneficial in supporting instances of community need that are not readily available to be considered through other funding programs that Council offers. This month only one application was received, which was evaluated against the program's assessment criteria, and a recommendation has been brought before you for your consideration. It should be noted, however, that the funding should be allocated from the South Central Ward and not the Central Ward as mentioned in the report.
Thank you, Mr Neeson. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Cole. Do I have a second to Councillor Beard? Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And congratulations to Rory and his job well done. He's done a wonderful job in the Shire and been around. But as we've said a lot of times, these small grants mean a lot to the community. And this is another one. South Corangamite Recreation Reserve Committee. South Corangamite is one of the fishing meccas in Victoria. People talk about it everywhere. So to have it just ticking along and improving is a great thing, and I'm glad to see that the grant can help towards that. There's still some outstanding monies available in the areas. So some of them are getting down. Southwest has only got $5 left, I think. But there's a few left. Central Ward's got $4,000, so if they don't spend it soon, the North Ward might well be after it. And there's still money there available for these grants, so get in for it.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and first and foremost, I'm happy to second this recommendation, and I don't think I've ever seen such a detailed application for a quick response grant. So Becky McCann, as the President of the South Corangamite Rec Reserve, if you're out there listening, well done. I know personally how tireless you are out there and how you're really trying so hard to get that rec reserve bigger and better. We have a couple of councillors sitting around the table who are ex-beaters, who the footy club team used to be known as out there. I think Councillor Hickey used to play for them, and I know Councillor Australian, you're affiliated with them. And it's very close to a lot of people's hearts out there at South Corangamite district there. So it's great to see the amount of work that's being achieved out there. They removed a heap of cypress trees, which did come at a considerable cost. Which I know the committee are working really hard to do more out there. So this small amount will go a long way in helping them with the replacement of the fence that they share the boundary with the neighbour. I think good luck to them. I said to them, we're obviously here to help wherever we can, but being the recreation reserve is a DELP land, so they're a community management of that DELP land. So I think it'd be interesting to see where we can help them going forward to get some further grant funding through DELP possibly. We know how hard that is, but I know they're trying to do a lot of work out there for the benefit of the community, so it'd be good to see what else they can come up with.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillors, nothing further? All in favour? Carried. Councillors, is there any other business you'd like to raise this evening? No?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Beard.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. And I should have taken the opportunity then just to thank Mr Neeson and wish him all the best in his new position at Southern Grampians. Great to see he's still in the region as well. But Rory, you've been a great support of mine, particularly when I was mayor and we had a lot of media things we had to deal with, not always positive ones, but and I look back to even the St Patrick's Day fires, and I pretty much dragged you around wherever I went for a good few weeks. So you have grown, as the Mayor said. It's been a pleasure seeing your professional career where it started to where you are now, and I think that's a real credit to you, and I guess your aspirations in what your ability to carry out with staff. So good luck, we'll miss you, but at least we still get to see you, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillors, nothing further. Mr Mason, open forum, I believe we've received something.
Yeah, that's correct. And so before I start on the open forum, can I indulge myself and just say how grateful I am for council, that those kind words, they do mean a huge amount. Being a councillor on local government's not always easy. I think, you know, sometimes the job's underappreciated, and I think this group is doing an amazing job. And you know, there is a bit of a secret to success around being respectful and the importance of respect. But we've also, I think, council's been blessed with some great leaders, and through my journey, you know, former Mayor Macon, through to Chris O'Connor, Neil Trotter, Joe Beard, and myself, Mayor. I think that, you know, there's been some amazing leaders, so I think I've appreciated and learned a lot from councillors. The organisation's terrific. I think it's just a great organisation. People in it just get on and get things done, and I love that about Corangamite Shire. And even when you're going through some tough periods, and we've had our fair share of natural emergencies, it's just been, I've always been proud to see the way that the council staff and the council as an organisation stands up and just kind of gets in and supports the community. So that's been fantastic. I'm genuinely excited about the next phase of my career. I'm really looking forward to some new challenges, so I appreciate your words, and looking forward to continuing to work with Corangamite Shire in the region, but I guess also really interested to see the evolution of the organisation. So thank you.
Thanks.
That was very indulgent. Thank you. The open forum question has come from Russell Pickett and Glenda Galbraith. In essence, what they're asking is that they're noting that the boat ramp has been completed at Lake Bullameri, and that the acknowledging that the Foreshore Committee mow the road verge to Narrowgood Road, and they're asking that consideration be given to cleaning up the entrance road at where it meets Narrowgood Road, you know, including just, you know, removal of some weeds and long grass, with a further suggestion about the possibility of some sort of entrance feature at the as you go down to the lake. So my suggestion, Mayor, given the kind of detailed nature of the question, is that I'll be suggesting that we get Mr. Kelly and in his role as acting director to maybe take charge of this and get back to the people who made the submission.
Thanks, Mr Mason. Councillors, we do have some items to deal with in confidential, so can I ask someone to move a motion to suspend standing orders? Thanks, Councillor Cole. Seconded, Councillor Macon. All in favour? Thank you. So before signing off, I'll just take this opportunity to give a free plug. This Thursday, Council has Australia Day celebrations at the Noorat Recreation Reserve. Everyone's welcome to attend. It starts off at 10 o'clock in the morning and will be followed by a barbecue lunch with Lakes and Craters Band providing some entertainment. And we also have Professor Greg Sisella as our Australia Day ambassador. So if you're not doing anything on Thursday, please come and join us at Noorat. On that note, I thank anyone and all who may be watching online, and we'll see you next month, 28th of February. Thank you.